My sister-in-law poisoned my brother against me until they cut me off for 11 years. Then my electrical contracting business landed a government contract that changed everything, and I sold it for $11.5 million. I bought a 40-acre property outside Nashville with a restored farmhouse, a workshop the size of a barn, and a view of the valley that made me feel like I had finally earned my place on this earth. 3 days after I moved in, my brother showed up at the end of my gravel driveway with 2 packed trucks, a utility trailer, and a teenage boy who looked like he hadn't slept in a week. My brother didn't knock. He just walked around the property like a man returning to something that was already his. "You have more room than you know what to do with, Ray," he said. "We figured we'd help you fill it." Ray. They thought I was just a lonely old man who had gotten lucky. They had no idea I was already one step ahead. My name is Raymond Cole. I am 67 years old. I spent 31 years building Cole Electric from a 2-man operation in my garage into a company that did commercial and industrial wiring across 4 states. I worked with burned hands in August heat and frozen fingers in January wind. I missed Christmases. I missed birthdays. I ate lunch in my truck more times than I can count. When the state of Tennessee awarded us a multi-facility infrastructure contract 6 years ago, everything shifted. Everything shifted. 2 years after that, a regional conglomerate offered me $11.5 million to buy the company outright. I signed the papers on a Tuesday and cried in my truck on the way home. My younger brother Derek knew I had done well. He saw the news. He heard through the family grapevine. What he did not know was the exact number. And what he definitely did not know was that I had walked away clean, debt-free, with every dollar sitting exactly where I put it. Derek and I had not spoken in 11 years, not since his wife Sandra decided that I was a bad influence, that I was too rough around the edges, that my opinions about how he was wasting his potential were controlling and toxic. Her words. She used them the way a carpenter uses a hammer, with precision and without mercy. Within 6 months of their wedding, I had gone from being Derek's closest friend to being someone he pretended not to recognize at the hardware store. When our mother passed, I sat on one side of the funeral home and Derek sat on the other. Sandra made sure of it. I did not chase him. That is the one thing I am proud of. I sent 2 letters in the first 2 years. He never responded. After that, I put my head down and went back to work. I built something. I earned something. And when it was done, I bought myself 40 acres of Tennessee red clay and old oak trees. And I told myself that this was enough. It was enough. Right up until the moment Derek's truck pulled up my driveway. I was on the back porch drinking coffee when I heard the gravel crunch. I walked around the side of the house and stood there, watching them come. Derek was behind the wheel of a Ford F-250 that had seen better years. Sandra was in the passenger seat, with her window down and her elbow out, looking at the farmhouse the way people look at things they want to take. Behind Derek's truck was a second vehicle I didn't recognize, driven by someone I couldn't yet see. And hitched to the back was a trailer loaded down with furniture, boxes, and what looked like the entire contents of a house. Derek climbed out first. He was 59 years old but looked older than that. He had the posture of a man who had been apologizing for something his entire adult life. He gave me a half wave that managed to be both a greeting and a request for forgiveness simultaneously. "Ray," he said. "Derek," I said. Sandra got out next. She was wearing new clothes. Not new in the sense that she had just washed them. New in the sense that the tags might still have been on them that morning. She looked at the farmhouse, at the workshop, at the fencing I had just replaced. She looked the way a real estate appraiser looks. Calculating. Measuring. "This is beautiful, Raymond," she said. And the way she said my full name made the word sound like a key turning in a lock. The second truck door opened, and a teenager climbed down from the cab. He was 15, maybe 16. Skinny, in the way that boys are when they are growing faster than they can eat. He had Derek's jaw and his mother's eyes, which meant he was carrying around a combination of things that were difficult to reconcile. He looked at the ground, then at me, then at the ground again. "That's Tyler," Derek said. Your nephew. I had not seen Tyler since he was 4 years old. Sandra had made sure of it. I looked at the boy. He had a bruise on his left forearm, faded yellow and green, the color of something that happened 2 weeks ago. He was wearing a jacket that was too light for the weather and holding a backpack that looked like it was the only thing in the world he would not let go of. You hungry? I asked him. He looked up, surprised that he had been addressed directly. Sandra stepped forward, positioning herself between me and the boy, the way a chess player covers an open square. We all are, she said brightly. We drove since 4 this morning. It was a long trip from Chattanooga. I didn't invite anyone, I said. Sandra tilted her head and smiled the smile of someone who had practiced it in the mirror until it looked natural. Raymond, we are family. You don't invite family. You just show up. I. She walked past me toward the front porch steps without asking. This is gorgeous. Is the master bedroom upstairs? I have terrible knees, so if there is a first-floor option, that would be ideal. I looked at Derek. He was staring at his boots. Derek, I said, keeping my voice level. You owe me an explanation before a single bag comes off that trailer. He finally looked at me. His eyes were tired in a way that was not about the drive. I know, he said. I know I do. But Ray, things are bad. We lost the house. Sandra's business closed. We have been living out of that trailer for 6 weeks. He lowered his voice. Tyler hasn't been in school for 2 months. The boy needs stability. Ray, he needs a real floor under him. I looked at my nephew standing by the truck. He had not moved. He was watching me, with an expression that I recognized. It was the expression of someone who had been disappointed by adults so many times that hope itself had become a liability. Bring the boy inside, I said. Sandra's smile flickered. I don't think that's... Porch, I said. I brought Tyler into the kitchen and put a plate of leftover cornbread and a glass of cold milk in front of him. He ate without being asked twice. He ate the way people eat when they are not sure when the next meal is coming. How long have you been living in the truck? I asked. He chewed, swallowed, looked at the table. Since January, he said. It was March. You said 2 months. Your dad said 6 weeks. Tyler looked up at me. Something in his face shifted, like a door opening just a crack. Dad says what Mom tells him to say, he said quietly. I sat down across from him. Tyler, look at me. He did. I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to answer me honest. Not what your mom would want you to say, not what makes things easier. The truth. Can you do that? He hesitated, then nodded. Are you safe? The crack in the door opened a little wider. His jaw tightened. His hands, wrapped around the glass of milk, went white at the knuckles. He did not answer for a long moment. Then he said, very quietly, not always. That was enough. I went back to the porch. Derek and Sandra were standing at the railing looking out over the property. Sandra was already pointing at things, measuring the space with her eyes the way a developer measures a vacant lot. You can both stay tonight, I said. But this is not a permanent arrangement. I need to understand what is going on before any decisions are made. Sandra turned around. Her smile was back. Of course, she said. Of course, Raymond. We just need a little time to get back on our feet. A few months at most. With a property this size, you will not even know we are here. That night I lay awake listening to the sounds of strangers moving through my house. I heard Sandra in the kitchen at 11 o'clock, opening cabinets and drawers, taking inventory. I heard her voice, low and deliberate, carrying through the old walls the way voices do in farmhouses that were not built for secrets. The workshop alone is worth $300,000, she whispered to Derek. And the land. Do you have any idea what 40 acres outside Nashville is going to be worth in 5 years? If we can get him to put us on the deed as a family trust situation. Sandra, Derek said, just listen. He is 67 years old. He has no children. Who else is he going to leave it to? We are his only family. If we are smart about this, we don't have to scramble anymore. We just have to be patient. He's sharp, Derek said. He's always been sharp. He's lonely, Sandra said. Lonely men are not as sharp as they think they are. Give me 2 weeks, Derek. Just let me work. I stared at the ceiling of my bedroom. I had heard enough. I picked up my phone and sent a text to the only person I trusted completely. Frank Doyle had been my lead foreman for 22 years. He had more common sense than any man I had ever met, and a loyalty that I had spent 2 decades earning. He responded within 3 minutes, which told me he was still awake at midnight and that his phone was in his hand. They here? The text read. They're here, I sent back. It's worse than I thought. Want me to come make them uncomfortable? Not yet. I need you to make some calls in the morning. I need to know what they left behind in Chattanooga. All of it. A pause. Then, done. Get some sleep, Ray. I did not sleep. The morning came gray and cold. I was up at 5:30 as always. Coffee made, boots on, walking the property line while the valley filled with low fog. This land was mine. I had paid for every inch of it, with 31 years of work. I was not going to be moved from it by a woman who had been planning this move since the day she first heard the words 11.5 million. When I came back inside, Sandra was already in the kitchen. She had rearranged the counter. My coffee maker had been relocated to make room for something she had unpacked, a stainless steel thing I did not recognize. Good morning, she said, pouring a cup for herself. I hope you don't mind. I found the cabinet organization a little inefficient. Put it back, I said. She paused. It's just more functional too. Put it back exactly how it was, I said, without raising my voice. Or, you can leave this morning. She looked at me. For a half second, the mask slipped, and I saw something underneath it. Not hurt feelings, not offense, recalculation. She was adjusting her approach in real time. Of course, she said pleasantly. I'm sorry. I have a habit of nesting too quickly. Old impulse. Derek came down 20 minutes later. He looked like he had not slept either. We sat at the kitchen table while Sandra busied herself elsewhere, and I watched my brother wrap his hands around a coffee mug and try to find the words he had been avoiding for 11 years. I should have called, he said finally. You should have called when Mom was in the hospital, I said. He winced. I know. You should have called on the day she died. I know, Ray. Instead, I found out from a cousin I see twice a decade. I set down my cup. So before you tell me things are bad and ask me for help, I need to know. Did you come here because you want to fix what's broken between us? Or did you come here because you ran out of other options? The silence was its own answer. Derek looked at his coffee. Both, he said, which at least had the virtue of being honest. How much do you owe? I asked. He did not look up. A lot, Derek. The house was mortgaged 3 times. Sandra's boutique ran up about $140,000 in supplier debt before it closed. There's credit card debt, maybe $60,000, spread across 5 accounts. He paused. And there's a private lender, a man named Birch, who Sandra found when the bank stopped talking to us. He's owed $96,000. He's not a patient man. I sat with those numbers. They were significant but not impossible. What they told me was not just about debt. They told me about a pattern of spending what you do not have, borrowing to cover it, then borrowing to cover the borrowing. What does Sandra think I'm worth? I asked. Derek finally looked up at me. His expression shifted, and for a moment I saw my brother, the real one, the one who used to fish with me on Sunday mornings before any of this started. She thinks you're comfortable, he said carefully. She doesn't know the number, but she has a number in her head, I said. He looked away. She mentioned 2 million. She thinks the sale was around 2 million. I did not correct him. Where is Tyler's father? I asked. Derek frowned. What do you mean? I'm Tyler's. He stopped. His face changed. Tyler's forearm. I said quietly. The bruise. The jacket too thin for 40 degrees. 6 weeks is not 2 months, Derek. I asked him last night. My brother's shoulders dropped. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. Tyler and Sandra don't get along. She's under a lot of pressure and she takes it out on a 15-year-old boy. I finished. Silence. I stood up from the table and put my mug in the sink. I'm going to the hardware store, I said. I need to pick up some things for the workshop. When I get back, I want to have a real conversation. No performances. I did not go to the hardware store. I drove 40 minutes to Nashville, to the offices of Margaret Ellis, the attorney who had handled the sale of Cole Electric, and who had known me long enough to speak plainly without being asked. I sat across from her for 2 hours. I told her everything. She listened the way good attorneys listen, without expression, without interruption, filling a yellow legal pad with handwriting that only she could read. When I was finished, she flipped to a clean page and started writing again. The private lender, she said. Birch. You said 96,000. That's what Derek told me. She made a note. I know that name, she said. Birch Capital. They operate legally, but they use penalty clauses that would make a loan shark wince. If Derek's already in default, that number is probably closer to 140, 150, with compounded penalties. Can we buy the note? I asked. She looked at me over the top of her reading glasses. You want to own their debt. I want to be the one holding the terms, I said. If Birch owns the paper, he controls Derek. If I own it, I control the conversation. And more importantly, I control what happens to Tyler. Margaret set her pen down. Ray, she said carefully, you understand that if you buy this note, you become their creditor. You will have legal leverage, yes, but you will also be in the middle of a family situation that is already a disaster, I said. I know, but a disaster I control is better than one I don't. She picked the pen back up. I'll make the call this afternoon. What else? The boy hasn't been in school since January. I want to know what his legal situation is. Is he enrolled? What are the custody arrangements? Is there any open case with DCS? She wrote it all down. When I left her office, I felt like a man who had just loaded a weapon. Not because I wanted to use it, because I needed to know. It was in my hand. By the time I got back to the farm, Sandra had rearranged the living room. I stood in the doorway and looked at it. My grandmother's rocking chair had been moved to the corner. The rug I had bought in Memphis had been rolled up against the wall. The couch was pushed to a different angle. Sandra was standing in the center of the room with her hands on her hips, surveying it with the satisfaction of someone who was already treating the place as her own. It flows so much better, she said. Put it back, I said. She sighed. Raymond, I was only trying to… Sandra, I said, and something in my voice made her stop. I am a patient man. I have been patient my entire life. I was patient for 11 years, while you made sure my brother forgot I existed. I was patient when I sat alone at my mother's funeral because you had arranged the seating. I have been patient for the last 18 hours while you take inventory of everything in this house. I walked into the room, past her, and sat down in the rocking chair I had moved back to its correct place. My patience has a floor. You are standing on it. She looked at me. The smile was gone. What replaced it was something more honest, a cold, assessing stare. We needed help, she said flatly. That's the first true thing you've said to me, I said. Sit down. She sat. I know about the debt, I said. The supplier accounts, the credit cards, and Birch. I know you've been living in those trucks since at least January. And I know that my nephew has bruises on him that didn't come from a doorframe. The color left her face. I am not the confused old man you were counting on, I said quietly. I know exactly what I have and exactly what I am worth. I know that you came here because you ran out of road, and I know that your plan was to work on me slowly until I was willing to sign something I shouldn't. That's not she started. Tyler hasn't been in school, I said. A child services case could be opened on that alone. Never mind the rest of it. I want you to understand that I know everything. Not because I'm threatening you right now. Because I need you to stop performing. I need you to be honest with me for maybe the first time in your life, and I need it right now. Can you do that? She sat very still. The calculation was visible on her face. She was deciding how much to admit, how much to deny, which version of herself to present. Things got out of hand, she said finally. Her voice had lost its shine. They always do, I said. Frank arrived the next morning just after sunrise, driving his old Chevy with two of his sons, both of whom were in their 30s and built like the men who build things. He knocked on the workshop door, and I met him there, away from the house. Pulled the records on your brother last night, he said, handing me a folded printout. There's a judgment against him, in Hamilton County. Civil suit from a vendor. Sandra had an LLC that was dissolved for non-payment of taxes in 2021, and the school district has Tyler listed as chronically absent. No medical exemption on file. I looked at the papers. Margaret got the note from Birch last night. I said, it's mine now. $138,000 with penalties. Frank whistled low. So, you're their bank. I'm their only option, I said. Which means I'm the one writing the terms. I looked at the farmhouse through the workshop window. Derek was on the back porch with a cup of coffee, looking at the valley. He looked like a man, waiting for a verdict. Frank, I said, I need to talk to my brother. Alone. Not Sandra, Derek. I need him to understand what's happening without her in the room. I'll keep her occupied, Frank said. My boys are good talkers. I walked across the yard and sat down next to Derek on the porch steps. We were quiet for a moment, watching the morning light move across the valley. It felt, briefly, like it used to. I bought your debt, I said. Derek turned to look at me. Birch's note. I bought it from him yesterday. $138,000. The amount, the penalty structure, all of it. I own the paper now. Derek set his coffee down on the step. His hands were shaking slightly. I'm not telling you this to scare you, I said. I'm telling you so we can have an honest conversation. Because what I do next depends entirely on what happens in the next 10 minutes. He was quiet. The valley breathed below us. She told me it would be easy, he said at last. When things started falling apart, she said we just had to get to you. She said you were probably lonely. She said you'd be grateful for family. He stopped. I knew it wasn't right. I knew the whole way here. But you came anyway. I didn't know where else to go. His voice cracked at the end of the sentence. And for a moment, he was not 59 years old. He was 23 and scared, and making the wrong choice the same way he always had. I'm sorry, Ray. For Mom. For all of it. I'm sorry. I let the words sit between us. Tyler, I said. Derek's jaw tightened. He told me he isn't always safe, I said. I need to know what that means, Derek. I need you to tell me the truth right now about what is happening to that boy. My brother put his face in his hands. When he finally spoke, his voice came from somewhere deep and ashamed. She loses her temper, he said. She says things. She throws things. It's not, she's never put him in the hospital. But he stopped again. I don't stop her the way I should. I know I don't. I don't know how to stop her. I stood up from the steps. I stood there for a moment with my back to him, looking out at the oak trees at the edge of the property. I'm going to give you a choice, I said, turning back around. Not because you deserve one, but because Tyler deserves to have at least one parent who makes the right call. I sat back down. I will forgive the debt. The entire note, wiped clean. I will not pursue the civil judgment. I will not contact DCS. And I will not call the attorney about the school situation. I will help you find a place to land and get back on your feet. Derek looked up at me. In exchange, I said, Tyler stays here. With me. You sign a temporary guardianship agreement that gives me legal authority to enroll him in school, take him to the doctor, make decisions on his behalf. Not forever, I'm not asking you to give up your son. I'm asking you to put him somewhere safe while you figure out your life. You can call him. You can visit when I say it's appropriate. But he does not get in that truck with her again until I believe he is safe. The silence stretched out long enough to count. And Sandra? Derek asked quietly. Sandra is not part of this offer, I said. Sandra leaves today. You can go with her, or you can stay and work on being the father that boy needs. But she does not sleep under my roof another night. Derek closed his eyes. I watched the decision move across his face like weather. I watched him choose, for the first time in 11 years, something other than the easy road. Okay, he said. His voice was barely audible. Okay, Ray. Sandra did not take it quietly. She took it the way I expected her to take it, at full volume, with her hands moving and her voice carrying all the way across the yard to where Frank and his boys were pretending to look at fencing. You cannot do this, she said, standing in the kitchen with her coat on and the car keys in her hand. I am his mother. You have no right to take my child. Derek, tell him. Tell him. He has no right. Derek stood by the door. He did not tell me anything. I have every right, I said calmly. I hold $138,000 of your debt. My attorney drafted a guardianship agreement this morning that Derek has already signed, and I have photographs of your nephew's bruises, a statement from him about conditions in that truck, and a school attendance record that a judge would look at for 30 seconds before agreeing that a change of environment is appropriate. Sandra's face cycled through 3 expressions in 2 seconds. This is extortion, she said. This is a family making a decision about what's best for a child, I said. You want to contest it? You're welcome to hire a lawyer. I imagine that will be difficult given the current state of your finances. But that is your choice. She looked at Tyler, who was standing in the hallway doorway. He was not looking at her with sadness. He was looking at her the way you look at something you have finally understood. Fine, she said. The word came out flat and final, like a door closing. She looked at me with a hatred that was perfectly clear and absolutely honest. You want him. You take him. He's been nothing but a burden since he was 12 years old. She walked out the front door. Derek followed her as far as the porch, said something I could not hear, and then stepped back inside and let her leave. We all stood and listened to the truck start, the trailer unhitch with a clank, and the sound of tires on gravel fading down the long drive toward the road. Tyler was still in the doorway. He had his backpack on both shoulders, like he was ready to go wherever he needed to go, like he had learned to be ready. I walked over to him. I crouched down a little so we were closer to the same level. You're not leaving, I said. He looked at me. She left me, he said. He said it like he was testing whether it was real. She did, I said. And I know that is hard. I know it is complicated, and I know it hurts in ways that don't make simple sense. But you are not leaving. You have a room here. You are going to school Monday. You are going to eat meals at a table every night. And nobody is going to put their hands on you in anger. He stood there with his backpack on and his jaw tight, working very hard to keep his face still. Frank, I called toward the kitchen. Frank appeared in the doorway. You got those blueprints for the workshop edition in your truck? I asked. Frank raised an eyebrow. I do, Tyler. Frank has been building things since before I was born. He's offered to help me put an addition on the workshop. I could use another set of hands to look at the plans. Do you any good with your hands? Tyler looked between me and Frank. Some of the tightness left his jaw. My dad taught me to wire outlets, he said quietly. Before. Well, I said, straightening up. You've got good DNA for this work then. Let's go look at some blueprints. We walked out to Frank's truck together, the 3 of us, in the morning light. The valley was clear now, the fog burned off. The oak trees along the property line were putting out their first green of the year. That evening, after Derek had gone to a motel in town to figure out his next steps and Frank and his sons had driven home, Tyler and I sat on the back porch with glasses of sweet tea. The sky had gone orange and purple in a way that only happens in Tennessee in spring. Can I ask you something? Tyler said. Sure, I said. Why didn't you just call the police? Or CPS? If you knew all that stuff about the debt and the records and everything. He looked at his glass. I had thought about how I would answer this, because I knew he would ask. I could have, I said. And if you had been in danger, I would have. Immediately. No delay. I watched the last of the orange leave the sky. But I wanted more than for them to just leave. I wanted the situation to be settled. If I called authorities and they left angry with nothing resolved, the debt still existed. Your mother could have come back. The legal situation was unclear. I needed to close every door. I paused, and I needed to know if your father had anything left in him worth saving. You can't see that by calling the police. You can only see it by looking a man in the eye when the choice is in front of him. Tyler was quiet for a moment. Do you think he does? He asked. Have something left? I thought about Derek on the porch steps that morning. His hands around the coffee cup. The way his voice cracked when he said he was sorry. I don't know, I said honestly. But I think there's enough there that it's worth finding out. And that's up to him now. Not you. Not me. Him. Tyler nodded. He looked at the valley the way people look at things when they are settling into them. The workshop edition, he said, after a while. Is that a real project? Or did you make that up? It's real, I said. Been putting it off for 2 years. I need a proper welding bay on the north end and another storage room. It's about 6 weeks of work if we move steady. I'd like to help, Tyler said. For real. Not just looking at blueprints. You'll work for your keep then, I said. Every weekend. I'll teach you the way my father taught me. You start by holding the boards, and you earn your way to the tools. He nodded again. And this time, there was something in his face that I had not seen there when he arrived. Something quiet and forward-looking. Grandpa had a saying, I said. He said the only things worth having are the things you build with your own hands and the people who help you build them. I thought he was just talking about carpentry for a long time. Took me about 40 years to understand he meant everything. Tyler looked at me. He sounds like you, he said. I smiled. It was the first full smile I had felt in a very long time. There is a particular kind of silence that settles into a house when it is no longer empty but before it has fully become a home. That was the silence of those first weeks. Tyler started at the local high school on Monday and came home the first day with 2 sheets of makeup work and the cautious, a measuring look of a kid who had been dropped into schools mid-year enough times to know not to trust anything too quickly. We ate dinner at the table every night. We talked about simple things, the news, the land, what Frank was telling us about the workshop foundation. Gradually, the measuring look started to soften. Derek called every few days. He had found work doing facilities maintenance at a hotel in Chattanooga. The honest kind of work. The kind that pays by the hour and requires steel-toed boots. He sounded different on the phone. Quieter, less managed. We were not fixed. 11 years is not repaired in 3 weeks, but we were talking. Margaret Ellis called me on a Thursday afternoon to tell me that Sandra had retained an attorney about the guardianship and then released him the same day. Likely when she found out the debt situation. There was no further legal action. The case was closed. I walked out to the workshop after I hung up with Margaret. I stood in the doorway looking at the space I had built, the tool wall, the welding table, the bench that had come with me from the old house, scarred and solid. Tyler's jacket was hung on a peg near the door. A pair of work gloves he had already broken in sat on the edge of the bench. Outside, the oak trees were in full leaf now, and the valley below the property was that deep, specific green that only comes in April. I had bought this land to be left alone. I had planned to live out my years in the kind of peace that is really just a well-managed loneliness. It had not gone according to plan. I sat down on the old wooden stool by the bench and picked up a piece of copper wire I had been meaning to splice for a week. I turned it over in my hands, feeling the weight of it. 40 years of working with wire. 40 years of turning raw material into something functional. Something that carried current. Something that made other things possible. My father used to say that an electrician's job is invisible. You never see the wires. You only see the lights come on. He meant it as a complaint about respect. I had come to think of it differently. The best work you do, no one sees. They just feel the results. When Tyler came home from school that afternoon, he dropped his backpack at the door, grabbed his work gloves from the workshop, and appeared at my elbow asking what we were doing next on the north wall. He had flour on his sleeve, from what I gathered was some kind of home economics class, and he was trying to brush it off without my noticing. "How was school?" I asked. "Fine," he said. The way teenagers say fine when they mean something more than fine. "I got a 92 on the algebra test." "Good," I said. "Frank said, if I get my grades up, I can start using the grinder by summer." "Frank has opinions about everything," I said. Tyler grinned. It was the first real grin I had seen from him. The unguarded kind, the kind that happens before a kid remembers to be careful. "So do I said. "And my opinion is that a 92 is a good start, not a finish line. Are we clear?" "Yes, sir," he said, still grinning. I pointed to the north wall. "Grab the stud finder. Let's see what we're working with." We worked until the light failed. When we came inside for dinner, the house smelled like the roast I had started in the slow cooker that morning, and the windows were fogged slightly from the warmth inside against the cool April evening. Tyler washed his hands at the kitchen sink, looking out the window at the property. "You can see the whole valley from the workshop roof," he said. "Once the addition is up, it'll be even higher." "That's the idea," I said. He dried his hands and looked at me. He was working up to something, the way 15-year-olds do, approaching a serious thing sideways before landing on it directly. "I don't want to go back," he said. "When the guardianship ends, I don't want to go back to them." I set the dish I was holding down on the counter and gave him my full attention. "I know," I said. "I know you can't promise things," he said. "I'm not asking you to promise. I just wanted to say it out loud." He looked at the window again. "So, someone new." "I know," I said again, and I meant it differently this time. We ate dinner with the valley going dark outside the window and the workshop blueprints on the corner of the table, because we had been arguing pleasantly about the angle of the roof pitch and had not yet resolved it to either of our 20 satisfaction. The food was good. The house was warm. The argument about the roof pitch continued through dessert and into the dishes, with no winner declared. Some things cannot be rushed. Some things you build slow, over time, with your hands and your patience and your willingness to show up every morning, regardless of what yesterday looked like. A roof, a business, a family. My grandfather taught me how to wire a house when I was 12 years old. Standing in a half-built frame on a cold November morning, with frost on the boards and a spool of Romex in my hands. He told me then that electricity does not care about your feelings or your history or your intentions. It only cares about the path. Give it a clear path, and it will do what it is supposed to do. Interrupt the path, and everything goes dark. I thought I had lost the path a long time ago. Turned out I had just been running the wire. If this story meant something to you, hit that like button and subscribe to Revenge Chronicles. I answer every single comment. Tell me, do you think I was too easy on my brother? Or did he deserve a second chance? Drop your thoughts below. I want to hear from you.